Hello, folks. Welcome back to Monks and Punks. I'm here with my co-host, Sophie Gonic, and we are very happy to do a special episode with Dr. Linda Rabben. Rabben. It's not Rabin, it's Rabben.
No, Rabben.
Rabben. All right. Well, Linda, it's really great to have you on the show. We're really excited to host you in person on the 28th, this Sunday from 1 to 4 p.m. at a free event that we are producing at the Quaker meeting. And I know you've written a lot about Quakers and sanctuary and immigration, and that's exactly what our event is about with some other great speakers. But first, before we bring you on, Sophie is here with me as my co-host, and she is going to read your official bio.
So Linda Rabben is Associate Research Professor of Anthropology at the University of Maryland and has written quite a few books on a number of different topics, including a lot of work in Brazil, has written several books on sanctuary and the sanctuary practices of sanctuary, and most recently wrote a book about stained glass in Baltimore. And we're delighted to have you join us today.
I've been also really enjoying your book, Fierce Legion of Friends, A History of Human Rights Campaigns and Campaigners. Your book, Give Refuge to the Stranger, is also important. But this was a precursor, a prelude to your what is considered your academic masterwork, Sanctuary and Asylum, which is dedicated in part to Howard Zinn. So anyway, Linda, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
Sure. Our first question for you is tell us about you, your background. How did you first get into becoming an activist, academic, interested in sanctuary and sanctuary movements?
Well, it's a very long story, but I would say it was about 30 years since I got interested in sanctuary and asylum. And this was through the case of a young woman named Falsia Cassinja. She was about 17 years old when she fled her home country of Togo, West Africa. She was fleeing from the prospect of genital mutilation.
Oh, wow.
And her mother did not want that to happen, so helped her get on a plane. And first, Falsia went to Germany, and then somebody told her she was more likely to be welcomed in the United States, which unfortunately was not true. So she somehow got to the United States. She had one relative in Virginia, but soon after she arrived, although she asked for asylum when she entered the country, she was put into detention, and she was kept in detention for about 16 months and under inhumane conditions, which then as now were quite common. And somehow a legal advocacy group, it was a women's legal advocacy group, found out about her. And they got her a pro bono lawyer who was working to get her out of detention and help her claim asylum. I read about her in an op-ed piece in the Washington Post, and I couldn't believe what I was reading. I couldn't believe that my country was so cruel to a young woman who had committed no crime whatsoever.
And what year was this?
This was 95, 96. And they were keeping her in prisons and jails with convicted criminals, dangerous people. And they were not giving her the food that she needed. They weren't allowing her to practice her religion, which was Islam. So at the time, I was a volunteer with Amnesty International, and I corresponded with her and asked her what would she like me to send her. And I sent her a care package with toiletries and a copy of the Quran, which she requested. And it was suggested to me by people at Amnesty International USA that I write a letter to the New York Times talking about her situation. This was after an article had appeared. She was in a jail in North Jersey at the time, and the Times covered this as a local story, not as a national story, but I happened to see it. So I sent a 200-word letter to the editor of the New York Times, and to my amazement, they printed it. And across from the letter was an editorial which called for her immediate release and for her case to be expedited. Within a week, she was let out of prison, and she eventually did gain asylum in the United States. Last time I was in touch with her, she was living near New York City. She had given birth to triplets, and
Wow.
she was living the American dream. I believe she and her husband were running a grocery store in the suburbs of New York City.
Well, maybe she'll come on
So
Sunday with the triplets. Wouldn't that be great?
that would be great.
There's a free lunch,
So,
people. So, if well, hopefully we'll have some immigrants there. Maybe we,
Well, I mean, yes, we will have immigrants. Some of the people who are speaking are at
yeah,
least one of
that's
the people.
true.
you might know that there are various groups in New York who are working on refugee and asylum issues and advocating for undocumented people and making a lot of good trouble. And they've been doing this for quite some time. So I hope you invite them to come.
We have, in
They,
fact, you'd be happy to know that
yeah,
our coworker Jillian Maxwell has been reaching out to all of the groups and saying, "We'll make you an offer you can't refuse. You can get a free couple of minutes on the mic talking about your group if you email about all of our great speakers to your email list." And a lot of groups have been saying yes. So that's been a great
good.
strategy to promote this, and I'm really happy about it. Yeah, we're
Because
excited for the event.
yes, they're on the front lines, and they have been on the front lines for a long time.
Yeah,
This is not a new issue. It's a
right.
very old issue, and there's a long history of abuses and discrimination and racism that's part of the history of immigration to the United States.
Yes. And since we're meeting you on Sunday in a Quaker meeting house, why don't we talk a little bit about the history of Quakers in the sanctuary movement? I know that you talk about Underground Railroad a lot and Sanctuary and Asylum. Why don't we talk a little bit about what makes Friends, Quakers special in the history of sanctuary?
Well, Quakers have been involved in both giving and receiving refuge from persecution since the beginning. So there's more than 350 years of history. In the very beginning, they were part of a small sect, and they would preach out of doors and make a lot of noise, and they were persecuted for their activities. They were even banned from worshiping inside their own houses. And many were imprisoned. Probably several hundred actually died in prison during a 40-year period from around the 1650s until the 1690s. So it's been part of their tradition to either get refuge from sympathizers or, when they had the opportunity, to give the same refuge to others. So it's really in the DNA of the Religious Society of Friends.
Yeah. And we kind of got inspired to do this event because we put the big circle S on the door, the sanctuary sign, and then we had to kind of create a procedure for what happens if ICE comes. What if somebody takes us seriously and somebody comes and wants sanctuary from us? So we have a procedure in place now as Friends. There's been a bunch of other churches that have done the sanctuary movement. So we're taking it seriously as in this age of draconian actions against immigrants, extreme deportations, etc.
Yeah, so I'm curious. You've spoken a little bit about the history of, and mentioned that the history of, immigration and the regulation of immigration in this country has been, horrific in many ways and incredibly racist and violent. But, reflecting on this particular moment, do you see a kind of difference or a continuation, or is it a ramping up under the current regime? I think I see certain continuities, but also a different kind of rationality at work.
I'd say there's an intensification of arbitrary exercise of authority and domination and dehumanization of people. So there have been episodes in American history where people were massively deported. They were summarily deported. This happened in the 1930s and in the 1950s with Mexican Americans, some of whom were U.S. citizens, and some of whom were never able to come back to the United States and were separated from families. So we've seen this before, but this business of wearing masks, wearing all black, not having any sort of identification, this is Latin American dictatorship stuff. And The one thing I keep remembering is a scene in a movie, The Kiss of the Spider Woman, which came out decades ago. But it is based on what was happening in Brazil when I was first going to Brazil as an anthropologist. And one of the scenes is of a man, he's just picked up off the street and bundled into a car. He has a hood put over his head so he can't see anything, and he's taken away, and nobody knows what happened to him. There's a more recent movie, I'm Still Here, which is about a very famous case in Brazil from around 1975 of a man named Rubens Paiva, who was an ex-parliamentarian, and he was similarly disappeared. And I believe his remains were recently found, but until just a couple of months ago, his body had never been recovered. So, the Brazilians like to say, I've already seen this movie. And so I'm quite familiar with these cases from decades of doing research on human rights in Brazil.
Yeah. And in fact, we were with a Brazilian friend the other day from Rio who said, all of her friends in Brazil are asking, why isn't everybody in the street? Because in fact, a huge percentage of the country is not in favor of what's going on.
A lot of people are in the streets.
Yeah.
And, it's not covered as much as it should be, but every week I'm out there on a street corner with about 60 other people waving signs. People are driving by, honking their horns and waving back at us. And this is being replicated all across the country in big cities and small towns and rural areas and on highway overpasses. And so, yes, there is a grassroots movement. I like to call it the democracy movement. And it is evolving. It is growing and evolving. And it's following a pattern that's very common in the history of grassroots movements.
This is exciting to hear that you're out there every week with 60 other people in Baltimore. Tell me what's on your signs? What's your messaging?
Mine says defend free speech. I picked it up it was a small demonstration across the street from the campus of Johns Hopkins University. And it was by a group of students who they had been camping out, and they were very scared that they were going to be expelled from the university. So they had made up some signs, and there was one that was left over, so I picked it up, and I've been using it ever since.
And was this in relation to ICE, or was it in relation to Palestine?
It was Palestine. They had encampments because of the Gaza issue, but some of them were international students, and they were very, very worried about being deported. So on the one hand, they were very scared about being visible, but on the other hand, they felt like, well, maybe if we are visible, then they won't dare to come after us. So there are different possible outcomes to that kind of activism, and everybody has to make their own decisions about what they think they can do and what risks they're willing to take. It's an ongoing process of, what Quakers and other religious groups call discernment.
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned Gaza and Palestine because that's our next event in October. But we keep on trying to not get ahead of ourselves and talk about the Gaza event too much. We're focused on Sunday the 28th. We should just mention how proud we are that we put together this event. It was Sophie's idea to reach out to a Baltimore academic. So you're going to be the guest of honor since you're coming all the way from Baltimore on the train. And but we've also got some great people that you're going to enjoy meeting. Ravi Ragber is a immigration sanctuary activist who was recently pardoned by Joe Biden. Nuala Odardi Naranjo is a former prosecutor who is a progressive political activist who then became a host. She runs a sanctuary, immigration, asylum, legal clinic, and basically immigrant rights community center in her basement of her house.
I've been working with her for the past year. She, along with the volunteers, have filed over 5,000 asylum claims at this point.
Sophie's doing ethnographic research, and I know that's part of your work as an anthropologist.
Yeah.
But of course, and the work has changed tremendously, in part because the legal landscape shifts dramatically, and, people are very afraid, and, whereas a lot of these avenues have been closed through legislation, and, that it was just, there are all these new fees for filing this, that, and the other thing,
Yeah,
filing for asylum.
let's ask Linda about that. Have you heard about these crazy new legal fees that like they're charging $1,000 to file, or and you're not even sure how to pay it or where to pay it, or
Yeah.
Asylum is 100, but
yeah,
Well, essentially, the U.S. asylum system is paralyzed. Essentially it's been suspended, and yes, there's an enormous backlog of cases now numbering all kinds of immigration cases numbering in the millions. The immigration judiciary is grossly understaffed. So it doesn't look like that situation is going to be resolved with any kind of equity for a long time to come. But again, this is not new. This is a pattern that's been going on for a long time.
yeah. I mean, and when people say, "Well, I support immigration, legal immigration," I think a lot of people don't know that to do it legally is its own incredibly Kafka-esque process, unless you are a very wealthy person. But to be low-income immigrant from a place like Ecuador, Mexico, or Senegal to come here legally is its own endless and incredibly bureaucratic process that probably has no end in sight. So,
Yeah. Well, when I first got involved 30 years ago with Falsia's case, I had to learn something about the immigration system. I knew nothing about it. It took me years, really, to understand it. And while I was trying to come to grips with it, it's always changing. So the immigration lawyers themselves have to constantly keep updating, what they can do, how they can fight certain cases. And there is a network of, many networks actually, of immigration attorneys who are constantly comparing notes and making suggestions on how do you bring this habeas corpus case in this jurisdiction. And, so it's a very messy, complicated, dysfunctional, corrupted, racist. I mean, every negative adjective that you can think of describes the U.S. immigration system. But the shorthand is broken. It's broken.
I want to ask you, you talk to a lot of community groups about the work that you do. And I'm just curious, what do you hear from communities? What are their, what are the sentiments on the ground from the various communities that you talk to about what's going on and questions of sanctuary and asylum?
Well, my talk usually does a sort of potted history of sanctuary and asylum, which spans, like at least 4,000 years. But then when we get to the Q&A, the inevitable question is, what can we do? And I actually wrote a poem, which I've delivered at certain poetry readings, which goes like this. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? So there is this sense of helplessness and desperation that you really have to work to overcome in order to be able to do anything. You can't just sit on the couch and moan. That's not going to do anybody any good. So I try to come up with, just local examples of things people are doing. Even if it's only going out on the street corner waving a sign, that's something. And there are many organizations that you can donate to if you have any disposable income. They have brought hundreds of lawsuits, especially, but not only on immigration cases. And so there are these regularly now, there are big demonstrations where thousands of people are coming together. And then after that, there's always some follow-up with events that are being planned. So as I say, it's always growing, and the kinds of things that people are thinking of doing are also growing. And I think it's like things are likely to get worse before they get better. And what I suggest to people is you're going to have to consider, what are you going to do if it comes down to breaking the law or not breaking the law? I have managed to get through about 50 years of activism, and I've never been arrested.
Oh, wow. Well, sometimes you got to create that, Linda. You got to choose to create it, and then it's a lot more fun.
Some people like to go get arrested.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's great. You want to do that? Do it with an understanding of what it means, whether it is an effective tactic, because I'm very big on effective tactics and strategies.
Sure.
And, I found My mission, and I think it is a mission actually, is to go around informing and educating people and suggesting to them things that they can do, or also to listen to what people's concerns are and try to respond to them. Because with this very complex system, people really need to know more than they usually know about how it works or how it doesn't work in order to decide, well, what's an effective thing to do. So a couple of projects that I have discovered, which I've known about in the past, and they've been revived in recent months. One is accompaniment. So you probably know about this.
Yeah, we're doing
Actually,
that. Yeah.
yeah, going with people to their hearings. And this has become a rather fraught and scary thing because people are getting arrested and taken away and nobody can find them. And, so that also has to be considered. What do I do if I take somebody to a hearing and they grab them and take them away? Am I going to resist? Or what am I going to do? My approach has always been, as a result of my experiences as an anthropologist and a human rights worker in Brazil, especially, is I'm a witness. It's very important for there to be witnesses who can then communicate what they've seen and heard and experienced to others. So those are things that's a useful activity that people can take on. Another one is American Bar Association is sponsoring monitors. They're not accompanying anybody. They are attending public hearings and taking careful notes about everything that goes on for particular cases, and then sending their notes and a form that they fill out to the ABA so that their lawyers can use this in order to effectively represent their clients in immigration court or in federal appeals court, because some cases do go to federal appeals court.
Good. I was going to also ask, have you heard of ICE chasers? Have you studied any of the direct action some people are doing to try to nonviolently interfere or disrupt the ICE arrests?
Yeah, allegedly sometimes that works. I have not witnessed such an event myself. I've heard about it. And in around, 2016 and onwards, I was part of a sanctuary network in DC, Northern Virginia, and Maryland. And they were giving trainings. We were being trained how to be witnesses to ICE raids or pickups of people, what we should do, what we shouldn't do. And we were warned, even at that time, they were saying, some of these agents, they're armed. So you better carefully think about what you're going to do, if you're going to get in their face or not. Do you want a gun pointed at your head? So at that time, I did not actually go on any of those excursions, whatever you want to call them. But I do know that there are groups, they are surveilling ICE. They're following them at a safe distance and then passing along word along the route to try to figure out where these agents are going and can we get a bunch of people there to stop them from taking people away. So yes, it is an option. I'm not sure if I would be willing to do it or not. I haven't had the opportunity to do it yet. But as I say, when I go and talk to people, I'm very willing to listen to people's concerns about these kinds of actions and to elicit what risks they're willing to take.
I mean, one of the things that I think is great about what you've just elaborated is that activism can take many different forms. It can be about educating, and it can be about witnessing and documentation. It doesn't necessarily just have to involve, going to the barricades. And in fact, there are many different venues in which people can get involved and use their skills in service of a broader cause.
Now ask a question.
I don't have a question necessarily.
Well, this is now we're working on it. We're working on it, Linda.
We're getting probably towards the end.
Let's see. How are we for time? Wow, the time has flown by.
Yeah, the time has flown by. So.
Well, okay. Well, people, we got to give a final plug. Dr. Linda Rabben, Dr. Linda Rabben will be.
We're gonna pronounce it 5 different ways.
Rabben. No, I got it now. Dr. Linda Rabben will be live and in person at a free event this Sunday, the 28th, from 1 to 4 p.m. It is called Sanctuary, Immigration, and Refuge. Quakers and activists respond to the crisis. because it's clearly a crisis almost unprecedented in American history to have so much draconian deportation and heartlessness. But Linda's work talks about an almost innate human need to give succor and sanctuary to each other. And there's some beautiful, beautiful historical patterns that are recognized by this great scholar, Linda Rabben. So that's at 15 Rutherford Place at the Quaker Meeting House this Sunday, the 28th, from 1 to 4 p.m. And it's
Hosted by yours truly.
by the lovely and talented Dr. Sophie Gonic. So, who is not, she's not taller than me, she's just sitting on a Zen cushion. Go ahead, Linda, yes, take it.
I'd like to leave a watchword from William Penn from my hometown of Philadelphia.
Great.
And it's a sentence that I think about a lot. We are the people that above all others must stand in the gap. So that's where I am. I'm standing in the gap.
Nice. And I love that you're out there every week on the streets, spreading your wisdom and your love for the people and your free speech sign. And so we can't wait to meet you and host you and take care of you. And there will be a free lunch. So we'll see you there on Sunday, Linda. Great.
Okay.
Any final thoughts, final questions?
Recording and I'll
Okay, great.
just stop recording.
Okay, well, then we have to have a final word. So,
Edit that out.
okay, well, yeah. Thank you very much, Linda. Hey folks, just a quick message. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe. Why? Because we've got content nobody else has. I'm Sander Hicks. I'm an activist, spiritual, political, Quaker, Zen, into nonviolence, into creative construction and carpentry, into investigative journalism, reporting, and winning elections for the progressive Democratic left. So please like and please subscribe. Peace.